why would that flip the third party key? That would hurt the Republicans. I've heard some of your critics say that you predicted in 2016 that Trump, okay, we've talked about that many times. I just talked to them.
Thanks everyone for your patience tonight. Usually we're not quite this disorganized when we start the meetings. So first off, we have one commissioner who is running a little bit late because they're stuck in traffic, and we have one who is home sick. So Commissioner Galia, who usually sits all the way over there, to my right, she is on the line tonight. And that doesn't, I believe, did we get clarification on the virtual voting?
She's allowed to vote.
As long as it was announced.
Right, but she needs to verify that no one under the age of 18 is in the room with her. So she needs to declare that.
Commissioner Galia, did you get that?
Yes, if you hear me.
And you verifying that you have nobody under 18 in the room with you?
Yes, I am completely alone.
All right. Now let's go ahead and begin. First thing we have is Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence in the Pledge of Allegiance. Somebody like to read that today. Nick would like to read that today. We have roll call. Oh yeah, we have to do that.
Sounds good. Commissioner Rana. Commissioner Walton. Here. Chair Woodson.
Here.
Commissioner St. John.
Here.
Commissioner Chang.
Yeah.
Commissioner Barron.
At home.
We have quorum.
You still can't get out of it.
Hi, this is the city attorney, assistant city attorney. I just want to clarify, Commissioner Barron effectively answered the question, but it's not whether anyone under 18 is in the room with her. It's whether anyone over 18 is in the room with her. And if they are, what their relationship is to her. But since there's no one there, it's a moot point.
That makes more
Got
sense.
it, got
That
it.
makes more
Okay.
sense to me.
Sounds good.
So I thought we were just being proactive and trying to get our younger youth to vote and take part in government.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up on our agenda tonight are special announcements. Mike, start that over. Next thing up on our agenda is special announcements and communications from the floor. We have any on our side. If there's anybody who has anything that they would like to say that is not relevant to a specific item on our agenda today, they just want to talk about how great the weather is and how foggy it is, feel free to come up and talk. All right. Quickly moving through this. Next up is ex parte communications for quasi judicial matters. As to the commission members, anything that you want to raise or any communications on any of the items on today's agenda? Nothing. Okay. So moving on. All right, today's consent agenda has, I think, only one item, which is approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I don't know if anybody have any questions or comments or changes that you wanted to make to our meeting minutes from last month? Not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion that the minutes from the June 13th meeting be approved as written.
Second from anyone? Second from Commissioner Rana.
Commissioner Rana,
Yes or no?
Yes. Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Chair Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Barron.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. The rest of the meeting went this fast. All right. This is where we get more efficient than the city council. This is my constant dig if you have never been to these meetings. All right, next up we have today, we have two items on our agenda for a public hearing. The first is the master sign program at 407 Reservation Road. Um, Alec is, or are you going to present that, Nick?
Yep, looks good. Okay, so good evening. My name is Nick McElroy. I'm a senior planner here with the City of Marina's Planning Division. The application before you tonight is a sign permit application for 407 Reservation Road. They're applying for a master sign permit. Basic information about the site. It's C2 zoning for general commercial. Standard application information. Next slide, please. This is the project location. It's on Reservation Road, across from California Avenue. It's along the commercial corridor. It's part of the downtown specific plan area. Next slide, please. So a master sign program is required for any commercial development with more than 4 occupancies. The Planning Commission is tasked today with reviewing the master sign program for its consistency with the chapter on signs in the municipal code. And if the master sign program is approved, individual tenant signs would then be subject to administrative review pursuant to the sign section of the municipal code. Next slide. Next. So the proposed master sign program consists of 2 different types of signs. The first is wall-mounted signs with backer panels on them, and they measure approximately 4 feet tall by 8 feet tall, or approximately 32 square feet. And then they have a monument sign, which is existing, and that's approximately 38 square feet. They don't plan to use the monument sign right away, but they wanted to include it in this sign application because they might one time down the road, and it saves them from going back and doing an amendment at that time. Next slide, please. There is going to be proposed lighting. It's going to be this gooseneck lighting that you can see here on the screen. This is a rendering from the staff report showing the rough look of how the 6 signs will look, and the 3 gooseneck lighting on over each of them. They're going to be facing down, shielded, and they won't impact the night sky, and they won't cause off-site glare due to the shielding. So they are consistent with our sign program requirements. Next slide, please. So the maximum sign area in the commercial district in any commercial district is 200 square feet. The combined square footage of this master sign program would be 192 square feet. So it's within that 200 square feet allotment. And let's see, monument sign is consistent with the sign program as well. For height, that's the main factor we look at to make sure it's less than 7 feet in height. And the nice thing about a master sign program is it establishes consistency across the whole site. So you'll see the continuity across the sign, across the signs. They might have different colors and logos and words, but they'll all be the same size. They'll all have the same lighting, and they'll all have the same sort of backer panel design. So next slide. So here we have the resolution. I'm available for any kind of questions or comments. We do have the applicant in the audience if you have questions for the applicant. So he can come up and speak if you need him to. Otherwise, yeah, I turn it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. I guess open up to the commission first for questions. Does everybody remember where this is? Been there and seen it?
Yeah.
I remember it because I remember the day of the fire. Yeah. So it's nice to see this finally, been slowly watching this get redeveloped. So glad to see this. But I can open up. Does anybody have any questions from the commission? Commissioner Barron, just want to make sure I don't forget you. Do you have any comments that you would like to raise or questions?
I am fine, thank you. I don't have questions.
We go pretty quickly, I think. You
Break the ice.
You're just going to ask anyway.
Yeah. This would be a question for the representative. Do you know when the tenants will start to move in?
There's a few tenants, there's a lot of them right now.
If you could stand up and speak into the
Come
mic,
up to the,
there's also a button to press to turn it on. Just, yeah. Oh, no,
Well, none of
for the people that are watching,
it's for people at home.
we have, it's a hybrid meeting, so there's remote people as well.
Just press.
So
the
since we're virtual,
There
we
you go.
actually have.
There you
have
go.
to be
So,
able-
yeah.
So you're actually yelling all the way to Europe, right?
Okay. So my name is John. I'm with Monterey Signs. First want to thank everybody for taking the time to review this. There is a tenant in there. It's an auto detailer. And he's actually the one kind of pushing this because none of the tenants have signage out there. The building kind of looks kind of bare right now. It's a nice building. So I think these signs add a nice addition to it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm glad to hear that there's tenants and that it's the appropriate time, and if not a little bit late for us to be moving forward on the signs.
For
So,
sure. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thanks for the question.
And I think Mike, no question. I have a question.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Tang.
I just want to know where the monument signs location is.
This monument signs location's out towards the street. It's kind of in the middle of the property and it's inset in. It's kind of, they're not really using it right now because it's kind of hard to see.
As it's almost hidden.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of vegetation growing in front of it.
So my question is, if people are driving up from the store or the shop and
Yes.
coming up, would that obstruct their traffic view?
No, it's in the middle of the property. It's not, it's
Oh,
probably
It's not
40
the
feet
edge.
from every entrance.
I see.
And it's pretty far set in from the road as well.
All right. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, so two things. Commissioner Jacobson, do not sit down.
Oh, no, well,
Now I'm gonna have him do that.
yeah, okay.
I'm gonna have him do that. It's okay. So you get it beforehand, Guido, and once the meeting starts, it's me. So Mike, I asked your question and it may come back to staff on this is, actually, I know it's going to come back to staff. With the sign, since the monument sign is not being used right now. And I'm thinking back to how we had the Starbucks sign when it came forward as a whole placeholder, as a holdover monument. If they choose to, we approve the monument sign, but then they choose to improve the quality of the sign. And because you got the two square,
Pillar?
Mhm.
the bollards,
Right.
and you've got the actual sign portion of it, which matched more of the old architecture
Mhm.
construction that was built at the time.
Yeah.
What would be the restrictions on them upgrading the monument to more match the style without having to come back to us?
As long as they don't change the sign area, that 38 square feet or whatever, 38, 39 square feet of the monument sign, and they don't increase the height beyond what they're allowed. And if they upgrade it, they need a building permit.
Okay,
For
so they
that.
would just have it would just be a standard building permit.
Right,
So if they decided they didn't want to have the Bowers, they wanted to move it a
Right.
little bit closer
right,
to the road for visibility. Because
Right.
It really does sit far back from the road. It doesn't provide a lot of value added.
right.
So as long as it met the zoning requirements for setback,
Hmm.
the idea that they wouldn't have to come back to us for
Right.
that portion of it. They just have to
Yeah.
build a building.
Yeah, the main, if they came back and they said, we want to have a 100 square foot monument sign and it's very different looking, it's not, then yeah, they might be a quick amendment at that time. For just updating the way it looks for the structure around it, I would just say a building permit would be suffice.
And that was my main question that I had, is more just scalability over time.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, I'll open up to the floor. I mean, first off, if you have anything now that you're standing there that you would like to add to this,
No, I appreciate Nick. He did a really good job presenting it. I think it's exciting for the town, you know, we get this new nice building in Marina. It'd be nice to throw some signs on there, get some tenants to come in. I think that'll draw a lot more new tenants in there. Once they see a sign up, they're like, oh, that looks nice.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I actually didn't know that the auto detailer had opened up there. So I'm sure that he wants a sign advertising his business.
he's been pushing me, which,
Right?
for good reasons.
Sure. Any other comments from the public? Okay. I don't have anything else. Commission, bring it back to you. Any other closing comments? Commissioner Barron, do you have anything additional that you would like to raise?
Thank you, no.
Right. Would somebody like to make a motion on this? Okay. All right, Commissioner Rana.
I move to adopt resolution 2417, approving a master sign program, MSP 24-0001, for a multi-tenant commercial development at 407 Reservation Road, APN 032-121-015, as proposed and subject to findings. Conditions of approval under Class 11, Section 15311 CEQA exemption for accessory structures, including one premise sign.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Thanks, Commissioner Jacobson, for getting that done. Otherwise, we'd have a hard time getting it back later. So we go ahead and take a vote on this.
Before we do, so Commissioner Jacobson probably should not, because he didn't
No,
hear the
correct.
testimony. And then if Commissioner Barron, I guess you have to keep your video on if you want to participate. So if you can turn on your video, so to vote, so. There we go. Sounds good. Okay. So, Commissioner Rana,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Chair Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Barron.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate it.
yep. So what I would like to add before we move on is, before you leave, because I know you're not going to want to stay, because nobody ever stays through our entire meetings.
Dinner's calling.
Dinner's. I want to thank both, only because I've worked with Monterey. Well, my son went to school with the owner. But for the presentation you put together on the design drawings, everything, Roy made it much easier to look at this and make a lot of decisions, because there are issues that have come up on the sign side for a number of us who've been on the commission for a while. And having all the specifications and everything, the material layout, what does it look like, not just kind of pictures, but really that. And then Nick, the presentation and the way you set it up, or Alex set it up for this today, actually made it much easier to read ahead of time to make the discussion go well. I know. So I appreciate both of you for the work that you put in getting this ready. Yep. All right. All right. Next up on the agenda is the 3204 Eucalyptus Avenue. I'm going to tell you Undam Temple use permit. I think comes back to you, Nick.
Yep, thank you. So again, I'm Nick McElroy with the Planning Division, and this is the second project for tonight. It's a conditional use permit for 3204 Eucalyptus Street. This is for an assembly use. Next slide, please. Again, here's the basic information. So it's owned by the Buddhist temple here in Marina. It's in the residential single-family zone for both general plan and the zoning district. And the applicant is James Volseca, the architect. Next slide, please. So here's the location. It is just off of Reservation Road. You get there by going past, sort of in between the Otter's Den and Kyoki's Hawaiian Barbecue. And it's just tucked right off the road, so it's very close to the main drive. Next slide, please. Little background on this. So back on April 17th and a few dates after that, the applicant submitted application materials for this conditional use permit to bring an unpermitted assembly use and a caretaker unit at 3204 Eucalyptus Street into compliance. There's no current formal code enforcement on this property. It's just been operating without a permit for many years now. Back in October of 2023, staff went to the property. We looked at the site at the request of the property owner to see where the site is, understand their use, because they do want to do some improvements, and staff noted that they didn't have a use permit to authorize the assembly use. So we said, before you go forward with all that renovation and updates and stuff like that, first you need to get a conditional use permit. So we've been working with them since October to make sure they get a conditional use permit. Next slide, please. So this is the existing site plan. You can see that they have a parking lot in the front. Then they have an existing storage building, as well as the caretaker unit with a kitchen. And then they have a existing temple with an altar, a sort of temporary altar out back, with some prayer statues and prayer shelters throughout the outside. There is landscaping. Next slide, please. The main upgrades they want to do for the site, they want to add a new permanent enclosed prayer structure at the rear of the existing temple. So they won't actually change the number of seats that they have at the temple. I didn't include this in this presentation, but they have anywhere from 20 to 45 people that practice here at the temple in any given during the week. And they also want to add 2 bathrooms, including a fully ADA accessible bathroom off to the side of the existing temple. Next slide, please. So this is broken down into 2 phases. The first phase is to legalize the assembly use. So that includes this use permit that we're here for today, as well as building permits to legalize any unpermitted work. Any accessory buildings that don't meet setbacks, they'll be moved to meet setbacks. And then they do have a number of events, special events every year. So there are some conditions specifically addressing their special events in the conditions of approval. Those are under conditions of approval number 9 and 10. So I recommend, if you haven't looked at those are important. We did show them to the applicant and to the temple, and they did agree to them before the meeting, so they are fully aware of all the conditions of approval. Next slide, please. And then phase 2 really is the addition. So the reason why I did it in 2 phases, that way, in case they are, I believe, a nonprofit, so they do have to fundraise to do this construction. So I wanted to make sure that if they don't complete this construction within the year that we give use permits, that they still are able to operate with their assembly use. So this is really for them to have it whenever they get the funding to do this work, they can add these 2 additional add-ons to their existing temple. And then there's a third item that they want to do. They do want to enclose the rear with a permanent shelter structure so they can have outdoor events in the back. So next slide, please. So when staff looked at this, we analyzed that this is the only Buddhist temple in Marina. And it's located in a nice location in that it's very close to public transit. It's very close to the downtown. It's just off of the downtown specific plan area. And it adds a distinctive character to the residential neighborhood, not dissimilar to other assembly type uses that are allowed in residential neighborhoods. And it gives a space for those local residents to gather. So next slide, please. Here's the recommended recommendation from staff, and then I can open up to questions. And we do have a presentation from the applicant as well. And so I'm going to turn it over to the chair and to the applicant. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nick. Yeah, again, the presentation very easy to read, especially on the conditions side. I appreciate the more and less detail on those. I'm gonna go ahead and gonna flip it around a little bit. I think the applicant would like to do a presentation first to us. Go ahead and let you do the presentation first, and then we'll ask questions from the commissioners.
First of all, thank you for the commission for the opportunity to come to share with you our thoughts in terms of why we believe that this temple is so important for us that you would help us approve the conditional use permit. I will share a little bit about the temple's history and why it's important for the community. And then I'll turn it over to Jim to talk a little bit about the technical aspect of the plan, and then answer any questions you may have. In the last few days, as I was asked to represent the temple to come and share with you our thoughts, I would try to figure out in terms of what is the best way to convey the importance to the community, as well as share a little bit of the history of why the temple came about in Marina in particular. So there's no better way to do that than to share my personal story as I grew up in the temple. I came to this city in 1982, 83, as a young man at the age of 11, without my parents. I came with my brother and sisters. And we pretty much lost during that time as a young man, coming into a city, didn't speak a single word of English, right? The Vietnamese community at that time was slowly coming through Monterey County because of the fishery industry, if you will. And so gradually the community started to build up, and more Vietnamese were settling here. But me in particular, with no parents, with just a brother and sister here, no English and no friends, if you will. It was tough. There was no place at that time like the temple for us young people to come and socialize or come and learn about and retain our culture. And so the one thing that I think we were so grateful about was that a few years later, a nun from San Jose came down to Marina and opened up a prayer apartment right next door here, Hillcrest apartment over here, 2-bedroom apartment. We were just praying outside in the garage. And then she organized a Buddhist leadership program, the Vietnamese Buddhist Youth Association. And we came every Saturday to learn how to be, decent people, to learn how to, meditate, how to become a Buddhist. And I think importantly, it was an opportunity for all of us, youth, to stay away from the bad element, if you will, right? Because at that time, I think there was a perfect storm for any of us who want to be deviating from, a good kid. Very easy for us to do because at that time our parents didn't speak a single word of English. They didn't know how to supervise us. We can roam around anywhere, right? And so she anticipated that was a great need. And that was the reason why she came down and helped us open up that the prayer unit. And after a few years of activity, all of us, I was just a kid, I didn't know anything about it, but my brother and sister and the community and the nun started to talk about we need a bigger place for us to meet because of the growing needs of Vietnamese having a place to recognize as a community center. Also for the older generation to come to socialize. You can feel, you can see that I think a lot of adults coming through the temple at that time were isolated, were depressed, were pretty much lonely because they didn't speak the English language. They didn't have a means of transportation to go about to socialize with anyone. And so there was a great need for that. I particularly remember I was in 8th grade or 9th grade at that time, particularly was very active in that sense, even though I was only 13 years old, I think 12 or 13 years old. I came to the adult meeting and I just sat there and just observed. They actually were taking out their saving, like $50 here and there, $100 here and there.
Hi, guys. My name's Jim Basalka. I'm sitting here being really nostalgic because I spent so much time in this room, probably 15 years in your chair. And I think a couple terms as mayor in your chair. And I'm just sitting here thinking about all of the events and things that happened in this room all those years ago. But talking about this project, I started working on this project in about 35 years ago. I did an addition for this house, and at that time, we just did the addition and never had to go to planning. We just had to go through building department to do that. So we never ended up getting a conditional use permit. So anyway, that all has sort of evolved into today because of the things they want to do and some of the things they did without permits, probably unknowingly mostly. There's a little altar, kind of a temporary altar in the back. Have anybody been to this site? Okay, so you saw, and we want to fix that into something that's permanent and up to code, right? So that's part of this project. It'll be a little bit smaller than what it is now, but it'll be built up to code. And then same with adding the handicap bathrooms. They're in desperate need of having handicap bathrooms on this project. And a couple of other little things that are we'll have to do over time. But the point is, I think that this is a great opportunity for the city of Marina to showcase the diversity of this community, right? So this is a temple that kind of stands out, and they do functions here, bringing people into the community. And hopefully some of you have attended or can attend in the future some of their events that they have there. So we've done a lot of work just trying to bring it up to today's standards and meet today's zoning ordinances. And Nick's come out there and walked around there with us, and I think we got everything in the plans pretty much the way the city was telling us they want it done. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about this project.
So I apologize for that.
It's fine.
Thanks.
You can both hang out there.
I just want to continue that a little bit. I get chuckled because I think there was a lot of small grassroots investment that actually people take out anything they have that they can spare. And $50 at that point was really big, right? And so my sister donated $50, and I remember because I think she was sharing that story. But I think it's actually a testament to how much I think the community really see the importance of having a representation in the tapestry of diversity of the community of Marina that we want to build. Even at that time, they already aware of that, right? You can see that it's actually not just for the Vietnamese community, but there was a need for like Korean American, Chinese American to have a place for Buddhists to come and worship, right? So they were very, I think for me, very visionary in that sense, right? The adults and the nuns, very petite woman. I wish She came here today to share with you, and you can see. But the powerfulness of that was that visionary thought at that time already. The other piece is just a place for all of us to develop and nurture our culture identity in a place that is just so important for us to maintain that culture identity, and a place for all of us, especially youth, to learn, like I said, how to be decent human being. Today, I travel across the globe for work, sitting in boardroom in some of the major brand of U.S. companies like Visa, J&J and LinkedIn. But I always look back and say, Marina is my hometown. And it is a place where I take my kids back every month, just to see where I grew up and the hardship that we went through, to be able to be where we are today. And then the other piece is just, it's a place where we're addressing the most need of the elderly community, the older community, Vietnamese American, who don't speak the language and who don't have the ability to socialize with anyone outside of the community, and whose children are working full time and they're sitting at home with no social interaction. And so if you come on any given day, especially in the evening, you will see at least 3 or 4 older adults interacting with each other. And they are so happy to be able to come out of their house in a lonely environment and then socialize at a community, at a temple center. And so in summation, I think what I wanted to share was, the temple, just by its physical presence, is a testament to the diversity of this city. And it is the benefit of not just Marina, but I think the Monterey County. And if you just Google, like if we as Buddhists, at least for me, when I go to a new place, I always Google to see if there is a temple where I can just go and offer an incense or offer a prayer. And then I go about doing my thing. And so when you Google, the only temple that you would see that you could actually come with an open door is the Marina Temple. And so, you see people coming through as visitors to the temple here and there from all over the state. And especially in San Jose, where people come and escape the heat, they will cross by Marina to offer an incense. And so it is a very special place. I grew up through this, and I contributed my, small success as it may be in the current moment, to the temple and to the nuns and monks, to the adults who helped shape us who we are today. And so I hope that you will consider approving the conditional use permit so that we continue to operate mail for many more years to come. But I also wanted to thank you for your consideration, and thanks, Nick, for working with us in terms of addressing all of the items that are identified in the conditional use approval. So we'll open up for any questions you might have. But thank you again for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much for that. It's actually always interested to learn a little bit about the history of Marina, because it's what you said, not exactly what I would have expected on the history of how it came about in Marina, knowing, and my basis is coming up and being raised around and spending a lot of time around Fort Bragg, North Carolina. It's a lot of military, and I would have thought that a lot of it would have come off of the military versus the fishing industry, even though that makes sense because the fishing industry is such a big part of the Monterey Peninsula. Okay, so that I don't ramble on, which nobody likes to hear. We'll go ahead and open it up to the other commission first for questions. Yes, Mr. Jacobson, I'm guessing you have a question. You usually do.
If I just knew how to work this little, now I got it right. I think, who knows?
It's the same way it worked last month.
My question is to Nick more than anything else. Over these 40 years with the temple in that particular neighborhood, Have there been any issues with regarding to parking or overuse or anything like that?
So they haven't been in this location for 40 years. They've been in different places for 40 years, but they've had a presence as a congregation for 40 years, if I understand it correctly. I think they've only been in this site for about 20 years, I would say. Oh, 35. Okay, sorry, 35 years. Okay. There has been some record of complaints, I would say about 5 years ago, about tour buses coming in, and then they ceased that operation back in that time. And then there was some issues with unpermitted structures, and then they actually got building permits back then, and they completed that. They closed that case, the code enforcement case back then, and there hasn't been any complaints since I've worked with the city, and there's nothing in the record since that time. So it's been 5 years since any issues, and there was nothing else in the record prior to that one complaint. So that's the whole scope of the complaint for this.
So it sounds like the temple is now fitting well within the community it is in.
Correct. And I took that complaint into consideration when I wrote the conditions of approval. You'll see that for the special events, I direct them to mainly use the main roads. The Eucalyptus Street kind of becomes an alleyway before it goes back to where they are. And so that alleyway didn't seem appropriate to be having a lot of people for any sort of event. So I really wanted to direct their traffic to go through the main fully paved streets. So other than that, I don't see a huge impact to the neighborhood to that regarding the original complaint.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, back to you.
Thanks. Commissioner Barron, then Cheng, then Rana.
Thank you. I took a walk to see the temple this last weekend, and I was very impressed. It's a very beautiful neighborhood gem that made me feel very happy that we have something like this in Marina, but also sad that I didn't know about it until now. So I'm very happy to know that there is a place like this in Marina. I have one little concern, actually, that it will become so popular that it will go out of the neighborhood. Because these places, once they are discovered, a lot of people want to go there. And I've seen it in other places around the Bay Area when I was living in San Francisco. So I think it needs to be taken into consideration that this place might go out of its capacity faster than anybody expects. One of the questions I had, I think, was already answered about the relationship with the neighborhood. So I understand there are not complaints from the neighbors, and I'm happy to hear that. My other thing is relating to that road that Nick said it's kind of unpaved. It doesn't look like it has sidewalk or anything like that. Is anything going to be done about paving this road? Because as more people find out about it, especially when there are going to be more public events, one of which is going to take place in August 11, the road needs to be a little bit improved, I think. So my question is anything going to be done about that little alley? Thank you.
Sure. So yeah, through this project, there's no requirement for them to improve the alleyway. I'm not sure who owns that. The road, Eucalyptus Street, starts out as a city street, and then once it hits that alleyway, I believe it becomes a private road. And so I don't believe that they own that portion of it. And then as it goes back, there's an easement for everyone else to get to their driveways and whatnot behind the temple. So it's a private road. I'm not aware of the property owner planning to change the alleyway specifically. And then once it gets past that alleyway, it's pretty well paved for in front of their site. And if you access it from the other streets and you don't go through that alleyway, the issue isn't quite as bad. But the applicant can also speak to that if they want to. Yeah.
I don't have any additional information on relating to paving the road, but I want to address the questions that you have relating to the events. these are the same events that we have had in the last 4 years. They're the same every single year. So these are not new special events that we're going to have. And in the last 30 or so years that we've been at this particular place, we have a few ways that we've actually managed the folks going through that road. Is we have volunteers that would actually stand there and kind of direct them to go through the main road, or parked on big streets and then just walk into the neighborhood. And as you as you heard from Nick, we managed that way so that the neighbor around there would not be impacted when we have more people coming during the events. And the other thing is, although we hope to be more popular, but in the last 35-ish years that we've been there, the volume of traffic going through on any one given time is not to a point where it costs any headache for the communities or the neighbor living around there. The volume actually tends to be, like say for a New Year, if some of you are familiar with, let's say, the Lunar New Year or the Chinese New Year or the Tet Festival, people come and visit the temple throughout the day. It's not just, let's say between 12 to 3 p.m., if you will, right? And so the traffic is a little bit more sporadic. It doesn't happen in terms of causing a huge volume that, again, impact in the neighborhood around there. And I think if it has, you probably hear some of those complaints already, even in the last 5 years or so. So I just want to share that. First, the special events that we have are not new events. They are events that we have had, Buddha's birthday, Tet Festival, Bulan Festival, which is the day that we respect our parents and our ancestors. Those are the three main events that we have every single year at the temple.
Thank you.
To the chair, I'd also point the commission to condition of approval number 8. If the commission wants to read it, it specifically calls out that if there does become a huge increase of calls for service or traffic or a nuisance, then we have the right to, engage in enforcement activity, which doesn't sound like we would have to, but just to give the commission some assurances. So.
Mr. Barron, do you have any other questions? Okay.
I have a comment.
Not yet.
You said comments or questions?
Are you Commissioner Barron? No.
No.
And I said, and you're not up. Commissioner Chang is up next.
All right, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for coming here to present to us your story and how the temple began. And in fact, I drove by there yesterday just to look around the neighborhood. It's not a very crowded neighborhood, so I'm so happy about it because my concern is about the neighbors. How would they think about it? Because when you have a service, when you're worshiping, you have the sound of the gong. And if you look at the conditional use number 19, operation noise. And over here they say the maximum interior noise level shall be 45 decibel. The way I'm talking to you right now is already 50 decibel. And when you have a service, I think it will be beyond 45 decibel. So I don't know whether this conditional approval here, 45 decibel, if that applies, that means you cannot even have your mount to have the service, and also you are not allowed to have the gong. The noise level will be more than 45. Maybe this conditional approval need to be changed.
Well, I'll come back. I'll let Nick address that, but I think that would be like any other call to worship, which I would consider that a different standard. But
okay, well, I'm just Google searching. Yep. The voice level when we speak is 50 to 60 decibel.
So we just
ask you come speak at the
if you can share, what does it mean, like a gong? Because I think for Vietnamese Buddhists,
Yeah.
right, we have this temple that we keep, and it's like a rhythmic,
Not a gong.
not the gong.
Okay.
Right.
That's good to clarify.
Yeah.
All right. The other question I had is I share the concern of Commissioner Barron's about the traffic. Even though right now you're able to meet the demand. And I just attended the Asia Community of Marina event welcoming the Japanese delegates. I realized it's not only Korean and Filipino, I do see Vietnamese was there. I was shocked. I thought when I moved here a year ago, I thought only Filipinos and Korean, but I do see quite a big Vietnamese population here. And not only the Vietnamese believe they are Buddhist, but Japanese, they are Buddhist, and Chinese, there are some Buddhist. And this new development are coming up, the dunes and all that. I see a lot of Asian community, and I think you will have more members coming in. So my concern is, let's say 4 or 5 years from now, when you expand, and the main road, the paved road that coming in, you can accommodate 20, 25 vehicles that coming in. But when I try to go to the other side, at the back of the temple, I have a problem driving through because there's a hole in there. I gotta make sure my both wheels are on the level ground, not to hit onto the hole. I have to drive at about 5 miles per minute, per month, 5 miles per hour to go through it. So definitely you do not want anybody to go through that back of your temple. That would be the front. So I'm saying, my question is, when you have an event, the 3 event that you're saying, that going on, maybe it's good to have someone at the front of the main road to direct the traffic so that nobody will go to the other side.
Right. And then that's, Commissioner Chan, I think that's what I mentioned earlier, is that we already do that in terms of the current practice is that when we have big events like that, we actually have volunteers that go out there and station there to kind of direct folks. If you, the Eucalyptus district, as you pointed out, before it hit the alley, we actually have someone to kind of like say, oh, go around there, right? Go through Reservation Road, and then park on that main street where the mall is, or outside on the street there, and then you walk in, right? Definitely there are some, that we're not going to be able to enforce, 100%, right? We do our best to kind of say you shouldn't go there, right? We put also on our invitation to all of our members who want to come. We put a note on there that they shouldn't go through that right as well, and no parking at the temple when we have events like those. No, only for dignitaries or the abbots and stuff can park inside, but community attendees or visitors, we would not let them park inside of the temple during those events, simply because we don't have enough parking for everybody. And secondly, we want to make sure that we don't impact the neighbor. And then this is a little bit, too much information, but as Buddhists, the first thing we want to do is we don't want to create disturbance to someone else, because that costs karma, right? And so we do our best if there are things that are impacting to the community. If we hear about it, we take corrective actions and take appropriate action so that we can prevent that from happening again, right? But in the future, to answer your question, if we are lucky to be able to grow to the magnitude that, so many members are coming through, I think we'll probably have to have a conversation about maybe, getting another location so that we can accommodate a bigger crowd. But in the last 30 years, we have not seen the volume to the point that is impacting the neighborhood around our temple. Because again, the visiting is very sporadic. Even during New Year, like maybe during the special event, like between 12 to 2, maybe, you probably have 200 or so, right? That's the max capacity, right? But throughout the day, there's going to be roughly about 5 or 6 people that would come through that, right? Minus those people who are more regular members that are there to help with the events and stuff. So
I'm glad to see that's this is the only Buddhist temple in Marina. I think there's a potential to grow. And so just to let you know, prepare, by the time you may have to look for another locations. Because otherwise, there's so restricted that area.
Yeah.
There's no way to expand.
In 5 years, Commissioner Chen, I will retire and I'll move back to Marina, and I will help the temple to resolve that if we ever rise to that lucky challenge.
I see the potential. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And is Nick, you're going to address the noise level?
Yeah, through the chair. So the section I quoted is directly from our general plan. Table 4.1 of the Marina General Plan lists these decibel reading levels. It's what we have. It's our standard. It's a standard that applies to all residential districts. So they are in a residential district. This is the same standard that you would have for your home. What it means by 45 decibels interior noise is that if a use is making noise, a neighboring use is making a noise, and you're inside your home with the walls, with the doors shut, the windows shut, if you then did a decibel reader and it was above 45 decibels, that would be violent. That would be going over it. So it's because you have, walls in between, it muffles the sound. So it's the standard that we have. I wrote it in there explicitly because we're currently working on a general plan update, and I don't know, it's probably not going to correspond to this same table once we adopt our new general plan. So I thought I would just write it out in black and white, what it actually says on the table for clarity. We haven't had any noise complaints from this temple, and they've operated here for 35 years, doing three events a year or so, and we've never had a noise complaint yet. So far they've been operating within the standards.
So it's good. There's no noise complaint for the past few years, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's good. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next up, Commissioner Rana.
Okay. Yeah. I think this temple really gels into the diverse and multi-ethnic composition of Marina. And it's been there for 40 years. I have some questions. The first is, what is the ethnic composition of the group which utilizes the facility?
Commissioner, currently, the primary group is Vietnamese. And then occasionally, especially, with events or major special events like Tet or Buddha's birthday and so forth, you would see folks from, other communities like Anglo, even Indian and Korean, Japanese would come in to join our celebration, if you will. But the regular congregations consist mainly or primarily of Vietnamese.
Okay. And the next question is that over a period of 40 years of your existence, how has the community grown from the perspective of utilizing these facilities?
Yeah. And then this is the reason why I like to Commissioner Chen, and I apologize, I didn't catch the other commissioner on the phone call. This is the most interesting things about the Vietnamese community. If you recall, I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of the first wave of Vietnamese coming to Marina and the Monterey Peninsula in general were fishermen families, right? Because they are from Vietnam, like in places where fishery is the main industry. But as you can see, like for example, for me as an example, I live here, grew up here, but when I go away for college, I settle where the job is, right? And I work in tech. So I live up in the Silicon Valley area. And a lot of my friends who were part of the youth organization, a youth group, most of us, 99.9% of us are outside of Marina. So you can actually see that, like when the first wave, there's a lot more people, coming to the temple and using the temple as a community center. But then when the younger generation like us, we're moving away, but we still come back every single week or every single month. It's just because the way we brought up in terms of remember your roots and also our temple is the place where we have a lot of fond memories. So we come back and have worship with the regular congregation here, which are older communities, older adults, if you will, right? So the volume actually have been declining since, the first time the first 10 years that we are in operation. And that's the reason why I said I would love, I'm sure some of the existing members too would love to see, the problem of volume that were as high as we had when the temple was had the first 10 years of operation. So right now is actually declining because the Vietnamese population is kind of moved out of the Monterey County because the children are in professional jobs that are outside of the fishery industry.
Yeah, but with this discussion that we're having tonight, with permission being granted to formalize the temple location, the word goes out and more people from the neighboring areas also start coming here. So do you see any potential of growth in the numbers visiting the temple?
Yeah, I hope it is. And with all due respect, I mean, I think, the news about this temple being granted as conditional usage, we're probably going to be spread out, but I think it probably wouldn't have as much impact as, an example of maybe 5-6 years ago. One of our abbots who was an abbot of Marina Temple here, he is one of those more well-known abbot, and he was very influential in the Buddhist Association for overseas Buddhism. And he held pretty high level position in that particular organization. And when he passed away, everyone, all of the Buddhists in the US heard about it, right? Because the news was spread that, he died, so we had to pray for him. And then we had to hold the events, like his burial event in San Jose, because that's a larger Vietnamese community. His funeral was the most attended by any Buddhist temple funeral. Roughly about 5,000 to 8,000 people. We actually have in auditorium that be able to accommodate that. But you still see the volume in terms of people visiting Udam Temple in Marina is still the same, right? Because it's actually, to be honest, it's pretty far from San Jose and other major cities. And unless you go and visit, Monterey beaches and so forth, or Carmel, you swing by and visit here and there. And also the Vietnamese population, I think roughly when I looked at as part of this research is that roughly about 0.2 or 3% of Monterey County, 0.202%. So it's not even 1% yet, right? It's a very small population. And so I don't anticipate it rise to the point where it's going to be a massive, volume that, we're going to be very disruptive to the community. And as I mentioned, if it ever reached that point, we are so grateful. There is a huge, reception to Buddhism and to the temple that I would imagine that we'll probably have to look for another place that would accommodate all of those needs.
Yeah, I think that's my next question. Have you explored the possibility of selling the property here and moving somewhere which is appropriately zoned? And also from space perspective, you are in a better position.
Yeah. I think, Commissioner, I think we have not seen the volume that justify us to make that decision to move. Because like I mentioned, if you come to the temple now, like on a regular days, you see roughly about 5-6 people come for the daily prayer. and they are generally older adults who come there and right when their kids come back from work, or they come a little bit earlier so that they can socialize with each other. So outside of that daily 5 to 6 or so, right? Big events like the 3 that we mentioned roughly get to about, a few hundred, not more than even 400, right? And so it doesn't justify a volume kind of sale now, because as you know, and one of the reasons why I was so mad at myself for not buying anything in Marina 10 years ago, now I can't even afford it. So it's going to be very difficult for even for a small congregation like ours to be able to afford buying anything outside of the place that we have now. And Nick, to his point in terms of the phase 2, I would imagine it also a challenge to try to get some, all of us to again donate to make that. But we will make that, because we see that, even to have an adequate, a better restroom, pardon me for using that word here at this meeting, for even us to use, I think it'd be great, right? And so I think we're going to do the best we can to get enough fundraising for us to do that phase 2 that Nick was talking about. But outside of that, I Commissioner, I think it's very difficult to justify any action.
Okay. And activities, you said that you have daily prayers, and then you have 3 or 4 big events in a year.
Yes.
And apart from that, anything, any social events like maybe wedding or something that you use this venue?
Yeah. We have not seen any wedding coming through it. I should have, actually, it's a good point. I mean, I should have my wedding there, but my wife would probably wanted to do it. She wants a destination wedding, right? And it's hard for me to justify her, ask her to come back to Marina to have the wedding. So, kidding aside, we don't normally have that, but we do on occasion have members that pass away, and we would have special ceremony or memorial for those members at the temple, and all of us who live in far away would come back for those. But those are hopefully rare occasions, and very unpredictable, that I heard. So yeah. So outside of that, I think there's no other major, except for on every quarter we have special events for members, that part of the regular members to the abbot would organize a day of prayer, and they go through meditation. They go through very specialized and more in-depth, I think, training, Buddhism training. Just simply because I think because we are regular, we need to be able to know more than just the regular person. And that's part of the Buddha teaching, is that you have to consistently learn and up your knowledge. So, yeah.
And I think the last question is that this area falls in the Marina downtown zone. And once the downtown gets developed, there will be a lot of traffic in this area. And I have questions about the long-term sustainability or tenability of this institution in the present location. So my question to staff is that they can think of an alternative location for the temple. So can we put time as a condition, that in so much time
I'm gonna
they will?
interrupt on that one. Only because I think we've got, as much as I would love to sit here and listen to this all night long, because it's really interesting, I think, to all of us, and as we're showing, we're getting off topic. And I think on this case, and I'm sorry to interrupt, it's just that this is a religious institution that falls underneath the as of right zoning to be in a residential area. I think I've got it right.
So-
That's how it was in
So,
some places.
yeah, I can address this. So in the R1 district, residential single family zone district, you're permitted to have an assembly use. So churches, this is assembly use. Assembly uses, the use itself is limited to how much parking it has. And the parking is a ratio of 4 seats to 1 parking space. So they're allowed to have up to 45 seats for their assembly use, plus 1 seat for 1 parking space for their caretaker unit. So it's 11 plus 1 for the caretaker, so 12. And they have 12 parking spaces, including 1 ADA parking space. So that limits their size for regular assembly use. So just like any other church or any other religious or assembly use in an R1 district, and there's many churches in many R1 zones. They are outside of the downtown specific plan area by about 3 homes or 4 homes. So they're just outside of it. So they, that will be upzoned with the new downtown specific plan, but it will continue to be R1 for the foreseeable future. I don't believe there's any change to that in the downtown plan or sorry, the general plan or anything like that. So their area will continue to be a residential single family zone. And the reason why you have churches and also schools, for instance, in an R1 zone is because it really does serve the neighborhood, right? So you have your churches and your assembly uses and your temples where the community is. So you have it in the neighborhood. So it's a very normal use. It's consistent with the use for that area. We have churches and other assembly uses all throughout Marina, and this is a very similar use. So,
Still, my concern still remains because churches and maybe other religious institutions, they have a fixed membership because there are more than one, say, such institutions. But this is very exclusive kind of a religious institution with no other temple of this kind.
mhm.
And as the community grows, the number grows, and with although it may not fall in the downtown specific plan, but it is very close to that. So there will be a lot of traffic coming into that area. So the overall tenability.
And Guido, correct me. I don't think we have I don't think we have jurisdiction. They all make a decision on their use. This is an assembly. It's legal. It's permitted. They're allowed to have this in R1. And I mean, not that I don't mind going down that path, but I don't think we actually have purview over that as part of the conditional use discussion.
Yeah, so churches and other assembly uses are, as Nick stated, pretty typical use within a R1 zone. That's every city I've worked for. It would be very difficult for us to put a time limit on it because now we're treating them different than other similar type uses in the single family zoning district. We do hear the concern. I think we've done our best to explain to the commission that if there is concern in terms of increased traffic or volume or uses, we do have multiple conditions of approval, and specifically condition of approval number 8 that specifically gives us that enforcement authority. And even if we didn't have that condition, we have the entire municipal code and our code enforcement officer to follow up. So we have sufficient means to mitigate any potential increases, and so yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. All right. We're gonna I'm going to finish up the last 3, and then I'm going to come back to my comments, and then open up to the public because this has gone on almost 35 minutes at this point. So next up, you're go ahead. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't have a specific question, but I did want to take the opportunity to express the comments. I visited the site earlier this week and took some pictures. And my observation is that the site and the facilities are meticulously maintained. The landscape is predominantly native landscaping. and quite beautiful. And there isn't even even one weed in the whole property. It's very nice. There's elegant statues and prayer temples that are beautifully decorated, and not even a spider web can be found. Okay. The facility is an outstanding credit to the diversity and the inclusivity of the city of Marina. And I'm very glad that it came to the commission for a conditional use permit, because that allowed me to go and see it, which I would have never found it. It's really kind of off the beaten track. I don't think, even with the revitalization of downtown, many people are going to say, oh, let's just go down this street and find the temple. You have to specifically, you're not going to drive past there on your way to the shopping center. So anyway, no, it's quite nice, and I'm proud to be a member of this commission, and intend to support you in any way we can. So thank you very much.
Next up is Commissioner Jacobson. Just wanted to be part of the conversation. All right. I'm going to come back to Commissioner Chang for a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that I really support this because it's a conditional of approval. And also, on item 8, we just mentioned earlier, in the event of the use resulted in increased service call or public nuisance, the city could get involved in it. So right now, so far, there's no other complaint. So I think it's a very good thing that you have this, and it could be one of the tourist attraction too, because Marina City is a very diverse community, and we have a temple here, and they reflect the Asian culture, and I think it's pretty good that I don't want you to close it down, but of course, if you want to expand, it's a blessing. You can always sell the property, like Commissioner Rana say, and then buy another one, a bigger one. And I don't see a problem right now for you to continue to be there. Thank you.
Okay. Since we've heard a lot from the commission, I'm going to reserve my comments and open it up to the public. If anybody else would like to provide any comments, yes, you've been looking forward to it, I think. Absolutely.
My name is Jasmine Doe, and I'm a community member. I'm also a new member on their board for Jewel Udam. And as I was sitting, I totally understand the concerns about the road pavement. And something that I learned tonight was that this road is a privately owned road. So my question to help advocate for the temple is, what are the protocols here in Marina to work on those conditions if the road is privately owned? Only because, with the new wave generation who has the interest of coming in and maintaining the temple, I think it's important to make sure that everything is safe for our guests and also for new members in our community.
So I have a question that goes along with it. If you just want to table that and we come back to it, and because I have an add-on question that goes with that same topic.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Another comment regarding Commissioner Rana's concern about the growth of, not the concern, but the comment about the growth. I think the temple has done an amazing job with having partnerships in our community. I know that through Monterey Peninsula College, the temple collaborates with their Asian cultural show. And it's a great way to showcase not only our Vietnamese culture and heritage, but also promote the temple. And you'll see a lot of our community members and temple members in our community events as well through I think it was the multicultural festival that we had a couple of weeks ago. So we try to have a prominent, sorry, I'm totally going blank. We try to be active in our community to promote individuals of all backgrounds to come and check us out. Come to our events. For the many times that I've come to the temple, they love when community members come. We love to feed them, and we just kind of like to help those who are not only interested in our practice of faith, but also just looking for a nice hot meal. That's our goal, is just to really give back to the community that has given so much to us as Vietnamese individuals. So that's it.
Thanks. Any other comments from the public?
There's a member in the virtual audience wanting to speak.
Okay. Fred Smith. Yeah, I see Kathy.
Kathy, go ahead and speak.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair and planning commissioners. Since this is a semi-judicial matter and as liaison to the planning commission, I won't comment on this other than thanking the Udam Temple for sharing its history, which was very interesting to me, and its values as a special part of Marina's diverse community that we've all said about this. And our council and our city staff have been welcome to the temple many times. And so I know that they are trying to be very open to all of the community as well as our local government. So I thank them very much for being here and for speaking so sincerely. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kathy. So you should come back more often, Kathy. See, even when you get here, planning commission, you go back to right to the facts, 28 seconds. So,
Great, thank you.
we're much more efficient. So anyway, thank you very much for that. Any more comments from the public? Anybody else? Okay, so bringing it back, I have a couple of comments that I wanted to make. And I'm going to totally diverge for a second because it reminds me of, I lived in Madisonville, Tennessee, which is a small community of about 400 people with a very small community college, so small college. And they had a Buddhist temple there. And the food comment being welcome, my first wife was the head of the residence hall program. And that was a constant thing for the students of that small university. So I remember that very well. And I remember the very good food. That's what I really remember. That said, there are a couple things that I have. The first is on just the timelines, Nick. And so I want to make sure I have it right. That we've got on phase one, there's 2 phases on the timeline. The first is within 90 days, the condition is to fix the striping only. So they don't have to repave the parking lot itself. They just have to cover up the current striping and fix the striping to the current compliant direct dimensions.
Yeah, our code requires the standard parking space to be 9 feet wide, and there's our 8.5 feet. So just a half foot each one, and there's enough space in their parking lot to accommodate that, I believe. So
then the second part of that is then over the next 6 months or 4 months, 6 month total, any of the general code compliance issues, like the electrical, all of those need to be brought up to standard.
they have to submit for a building permit, correct? Yeah.
They don't have to have it fixed. They just have to have everything in process, and then they can get it done. And then the intention is that within a year, the goal is that within a year have all of that fixed and have the permitting started for phase 2. Or is phase 2 just?
Phase 2 is not attached to their expiration at all. So
Okay.
their phase 2 is basically, so they don't have to come back and modify their permit at all. They just have that as part of the record that at some point in the future, they'll come for a building permit to do those improvements. Really, they don't need to come back to the planning commission unless they're going to expand the use beyond 45
No, and I didn't
regular
think they had to
people,
come back
so-
to us. I was
Yeah.
wanting to kind of understand what I had
But
read
yeah.
and everything with the conditions.
Right, yeah, so really the condition of approval is that within the first year, they have to have all of the unpermitted work fixed, more or less, and then, or be in process of that. So sometimes building permits can take a little longer, but it's really to get the building permit issued and the work begun is the intent.
Along with the permitting, the next thing that I had was question follow-up was on the lighting that exists there. And right now it does not appear in the current plans and probably the way it's set up that they are planning on changing the lighting overall, other than what they have, which is basically just more access lighting than it is anything else. And I'm assuming that if they wanted to change that, they would need to come back. They'd have to get a building permit for that.
So we do have a lighting code condition of approval that we've been adding more recently, and it basically states that if their lighting causes off-site glare, it's condition of approval number 17. If it causes unnecessary glare onto adjacent properties, then staff can address that basically. So it gives the authority to the CDD director, to Guido, to basically have them shield it or reduce the lumens. But if they're going to add lighting to the site, that's just a building permit, just electric permit.
That's what I thought. It was more along we've addressed that in previous conditions in our commercial areas. We just haven't had one that's sitting in the middle of a residential area like this. So I was just curious on how that plays out.
Yeah, it's a similar condition we would put on any commercial use as well. Yeah.
Okay. Next up is, we have a couple more questions. And notice that mostly for staff. In 1 minute, and then I'll open it back up. Next one is actually, I'll just come to this one. It's signs. So right now that there is no, going back to the marketing of what we have, and ultimately this is a church is an area. If they wanted to add a sign, let's say they just wanted to put a sign on the outside fence to the area, because eucalyptus is not one of our showcase roads anywhere definitionally in the city of Marina. Is that they would just have to fall under the regular municipal sign code?
Correct. Yeah, in a residential district. So we allow signs in residential districts. Like a apartment building can have a sign, a monument sign, or a sign on a fence. I don't know the exact dimensions of that, but they would just come in and apply for a sign permit. It would be staff level.
Come to us for that because of the size.
Staff level.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to make sure, because if they did, I'd want to add a condition on to that now, just in case they ever wanted to do that.
Yeah, that's already the new sign ordinance. It's all at staff level discretion. Right. Yeah, unless
that was what we voted on. But I just wanted these signs have come up a lot in the last 2 months.
Yeah.
So next thing I have is long term, and this is just my understanding of the caretaker's house, is based on the size of that. Does it have to stay as a separate entity, or could it be actually classified as an ADU?
It could be an ADU. Either way, it's kind of the similar idea, right? Caretaker units was one of the names of an ADU prior to ADU law, so you could consider it an ADU. Sure.
The only reason I say is if they down the road wanted to make the design changes to that, treating it as an ADU would simplify the design changes than treating it as a separate unit.
Yeah, the way I see it is that the caretaker unit is being authorized by this use permit. So it's originally it was a single family home that's now been converted to a caretaker unit and an assembly use, and so they could technically apply for an ADU as well, I suppose. So I guess that's the advantage of calling it a caretaker unit, is it kind of gives them that option if they wanted to do something like that in the future. But yeah, I mean, they can make modifications to the caretaker unit. They can, modify that with building permits if they want to. The main reason they would come back for you, like I said, would just be if they increase the size of the assembly hall and wanted to increase their number of seats, because then they have to redo the parking somehow to make that work. So that's the main reason for coming back to you.
And for the applicants, I appreciate it. We haven't had a lot of issues that have come up where we have this type of usage within our residential area. So it's for me and hopefully the rest of the commission, it's an education process to understand the nuances. The last question I have, and this comes back to the one that was raised on eucalyptus. So we're the intention of the condition for events is to limit use of the unpaved portion of eucalyptus that is really considered private property as the cut through alley for the apartment complex. My question, and this is it definitely is it's a staff issue, it's not an applicant issue, is if it is a private alleyway access we don't want them parking on that. Is there an obligation or a way as a city, because we can't force the owner of the apartment complex to say you can't park on this dirt alleyway. But if we don't want that as a city, is that something that we can add from a city public works perspective to address that? So that, because I'm going back to the fact that they host an event, they have somebody come up who isn't from here, and now it gets into a confrontation. Well, I want to park here. And we're telling them they have to control that. But ultimately it's not even a public road. It's not even city road. So I don't know how we can control asking our applicant to not allow people to park on a private access road. It just seems a little bit incongruous.
Yeah, I get that.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can always encourage applicants and the commission could add language, but the chair has the right answer that it's a private road, we're limited in terms of how much we can push back. But but if the commission wants to add a condition that says to encourage the applicant to work with that private ownership, we can certainly add that. But
I don't necessarily think that I want the applicant to do that, because I don't think it's the applicant's responsibility. I think it's our responsibility as the city that we have a open alleyway road. And I mean, the fact that we're adding the condition, asking the applicant to, hey, when you have an event, we would like you to remind your people that this is a private road. I'm fine. I don't think they should have to go any farther than that, because ultimately it's a private road, and only because it's literally in the news today. So in North Carolina today, Trump had a rally. A number of people parked in a local private parking lot. And then while they were at the rally, the owner of the parking lot who just said, oh, well, you're not allowed to park here, and had all the cars towed. Mm-hmm. And right, wrong, or indifferent of how that developed, it made me think of it. It comes back to kind of the same thing. It's private property. If the owner of the apartment complex wanted to have those cars towed, they can do that. And we have no control as a city. And the applicants don't have any control on that either. So I don't think we have a right. We can make that recommendation, but I don't think we have a right to ask them to have any level of enforcement over
No,
there.
I wasn't speaking to enforcement, Chair. We were just trying to support the commission's.
No, and I get it, but I think from an enforcement perspective, I think it does fall back on public works. That if this is a private road that appears to be not a private road in the city of Marina, for all of its dirt construction and everything else, is that something that we can bring up to public works to say, maybe we want to label this at some point, at least on the non-reservation side of the road?
Yes, staff can certainly bring that up to the public works. That's fine.
Okay. And that's really my question on eucalyptus. And yes.
Just one more addition. I forgot to mention, I think I had a conversation with the board president. And one of the things that I think we were saying, if ever there's a growth, and this is a point that I've got to make this, if ever there's a growth, we actually had, like in the first 10 years I was mentioning about, where, the demand was pretty high. We actually rented a facility. It was, I think, the Legend of Honor or something like that. We actually rented that facility to have the Buddhist birthday celebration there instead of at the temple. So I think in the future, if there's an ever high volume demand like that, we'll probably do something similar where we would rent it at a bigger hall to accommodate a larger crowd, in addition to more available parkings. So that's the one thing that I forgot to mention, that we actually had a conversation a while back.
Great. And so I want to make sure that since I asked my question, and added it onto yours, that I did address yours at the same time.
Well, it was more so about like the pothole, like what Commissioner Chang was saying, like how do we fix those roads? There has
So-
to advocate to fix those roads.
I can, yeah, I mean, I can add that or you can add it. I mean.
So
it's-
the road directly in front of the temple is owned by the temple. So if there's a pothole on that spot, you can fix it. It's your land. It's your public, it's like your area. And then there's an easement over it for access, of course, to the people beyond that, beyond your parcel. If it's in front of the other parcels, you would just need to work with the property owners to fix that.
And kind of go back to what I was sharing earlier, we will continue to operate like we've done in the past, where when there are major events like those, we will have volunteers to stand, to kind of like preventive measure, to direct them to parking or go to the different route. But it is, private property if it's beyond our, if it's not one of the temple guests, if they go through there, they have to take their own risk in terms of going through the potholes, if you will, right? But when we have special events, we will continue to do the practice of, going out there and directing the traffic and not, having them go through the alley.
To me, just my personal one. I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia. The church that I went to with my parents growing up, we parked 7 blocks away. So I remember, okay, we had to walk, we parked, we found a place and we walked 7 blocks to be able to get to the church because it was in Old Town Alexandria. So, churches have events.
Yeah.
That there's no different whether it's a Buddhist temple or a Catholic church or a Lutheran church. I mean, that's my perspective on this. Ma'am, you had a comment you wanted to make?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kim Tran. I live in Monterey, and it's just my private opinion. Regarding the parking issue, I think with the conditional use, I'm sure we have volunteers to direct drivers to park on the street on the 3 big occasions, namely that the Lunar New Year, the Buddha's birthday, and Mother's Day, Vietnamese Mother's Day. So considering the noise that generated from those 3 big events, I think they are acceptable because for the last more than 20 years, there's only one single complaint. So, so parking issue aside, the noise aside, and no other complaints from the neighborhood, I hope that the commission will approve the conditional use of Udam Temple. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that was a kind of public and commission open period. So I'm going to close it to the public. I guess I closed it from the commission, open it to the public, coming back to the commission for one last set of comments. No additional comments. Okay. So, at this point, would somebody like to make a motion?
I would like to make the motion. I move to adopt Planning Commission Resolution number 24-14, approving conditional use permit CU 24-0001 to bring an existing unpermitted assembly use and on-site caretaker unit located at 3204 Eucalyptus Street, APN 032-082-032, into compliance with the Marina Municipal Code. The CUP is subject to findings, conditions of approval, and is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act under CEQA guidelines, section 15301, 15303, and 15332 for existing facilities, new construction and conversion of small structures and infill development projects respectively.
Second. I will second.
I know, but I talked so much and I really did try to sit over here, be quiet. I just want to thank all of you for coming out this evening. The presentation was great. Nick, the way that you wrote this, I love this new, I shouldn't say it's new, but it really, you refined this is really good process. And I want to thank the community for being in Marina for the last 40 years. I think that I think that you are in a perfect location. I've walked by your location many years. I sit with the Medicine Buddha, primarily. And over the years, I walked by, I have a brother who lives just down the street from you. Haven't always, and I've always been here. Anyway, thank you for coming. Thank you for this presentation. Thank you for the love and that you spread throughout the community. Thank you for feeding so many people over the years. I appreciate you all for coming out this evening. Thank you.
Commissioner Jacobson,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Chair Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Rana,
Yes.
Commissioner Barron.
Yes.
Motion passes.
You went backwards. So, all right. All right. So thank you very much, everyone. I allowed her to speak because I know she's very passionate about this and she was very patient. Again, I agree with all the commissioners and I think the planning staff also that we all are happy that you're here in our community and really look forward to another 40 years of growth and development in our community, whether it stays at the same size or grows really big. It's not about the size. So thank you very much. I think we'll give you a minute because you probably don't want to sit around for the rest of us. So we'll just take a 2 or 3 minute break here while Jean.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So that's actually,
Can we?
so we have a couple things we have left on the agenda that we need to cover. But before we go on with that, I didn't want to raise it there, but your comment about the right of way and being able to fix the potholes in front of the property. I thought that section of those 3 or 4 houses that are right there on Eucalyptus, that section of Eucalyptus is part of the city street system. And that they can't, I mean, that's the city. I can't go in front of my house and fix potholes in front of my house.
I looked it up on Parcel Quest just now during the meeting. It's all private. Eucalyptus Street is private.
Oh.
Past the alley. So starting with the alleyway, beyond the alleyway, it's all private. Before the alleyway, it's city. Once it hits the alleyway,
So it's
where
another,
it narrows.
another one of our grandfathered in
Correct.
disasters.
Yeah, it's just part of it. Before it was incorporated, it was just a holdover, most likely.
One owner?
No, multiple owners.
They own sections of the road.
Yeah.
I mean, that would almost be like no different than East Garrison, and the roads are owned by the community, and every resident owns technically a small portion of those roads and have to maintain it.
Where, can you show?
Yeah.
No, I have it up here.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I did not.
Here's the property.
I didn't realize we had full streets that were
Where's
the main
the-
streets like that were still private. I knew we had shoulders and sidewalks and things like that, like in front of my house, but not entire streets like that.
Wait, city.
Interesting.
This is where the.
All right. All right, coming back to our last 4 items on the agenda, we have 2 informational items.
Okay, cool.
First one is Guido wants to talk to us about social media training. Well, actually, the deputy city attorney, Joseph, are you still here? Are you hanging out?
I'm here. That was very interesting conversation. I'm glad I got to listen on that. First of all, I can't for the life of me change my name to my actual name. I wonder if Fred can do me a favor and change.
SMW?
Yeah, it's not letting me rename myself. Should be SEPHPETTA. Or Joseph Petta is also fine. SMW is.
No, if you just leave SMW, we will create names to go around those initials.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, and I will now that I've now I will go on video for a moment at least. Hi everybody. Good evening. So I'm here to
and so before you get started, just so you know, everybody's gone. It's just us.
Great.
And the spiders.
Okay, well, excellent. That's good to know. Thank you, Chair. So I'm here to give a brief, mercifully brief presentation on the use of social media. I do have a PowerPoint I'll share with you in a moment if I can make the share function work. This presentation is limited in scope. There are, as you might imagine, a lot of sub-issues around social media. You may even be aware of one of the many U.S. Supreme Court cases that was decided this term, dealt with social media in a different context than we'll be talking about tonight. But social media, raises First Amendment issues, raises Public Record Act issues, Brown Act issues, and others that we just simply don't have time for tonight. But if the commission is interested, I can certainly revisit those later. Let me try now to pull up my slideshow.
Should be able to share.
There we go. Okay. And now if I go over to slideshow and from beginning, there we go. Okay. Okay, so this presentation is going to be, as I mentioned, just on avoiding the appearance of improper bias via social media. What that means is how to make sure that the public does not think that you are telegraphing prejudgment about projects that may come before or are in line to come before the commission. And this is a touchy subject for many reasons, which I will dive into now. The first of which is, of course, you all, many, if not all of you, likely consider social and other electronic media necessary and useful tools for your jobs as city decision makers. They allow you to communicate with the public. They allow you to more efficiently perform your various duties. They allow you, and they should continue to allow you to engage in conversations with members of the public, to answer their questions, to provide information, and even to ask information from them relating to matters of city business. Social media in all of these cases is a very useful and at this point, pretty indispensable tool for a lot of your duties. But what it also creates is a risk of saying too much. It's so easy, of course, to post whatever your latest thought is on social media, be it Facebook or Instagram or whatever. There is this risk of telegraphing that you've pre-formulated your ideas about a particular development application before you've actually heard the applicant. And I'll explain to you why that can be a problem and how to avoid it. By the way, I'm happy to answer questions, and I'll do so at the end unless something is just really, really pressing. I do want to add one caveat. The city does not, to my knowledge, and I believe to staff's knowledge, have an adopted social media policy right now covering decision makers such as your usage of social media and setting forth best practices. A lot of jurisdictions do this. If you search the web for other jurisdictions' social media policies, you will find best practices. I've looked at some of those, and we provide those for other clients of ours. So if the city is interested in looking into that, staff could certainly receive direction to work on something like that in the future. My presentation tonight is not intended to describe in any way an official city policy about social media. This is simply my own, the city attorney office's sort of interpretation of current law and best practices. Okay, so someone else, I believe Councilmember Biala mentioned tonight that the type of decisions often before you are what are called quasi-judicial. The word I've used here in the first billet is quasi-adjudicatory. It's the same thing, as distinguished from what's called quasi-legislative, say when you're approving a general plan amendment. Quasi-adjudicatory decisions have to do with individual permit applications that come before the Planning Commission or the City Council. And so the common law in California and throughout the country has firmly established that individuals who are putting applications before these bodies deserve due process and a right to a fair hearing when their applications are considered. And that means that you, as decision makers, have to be free of bias for or against any party. Now, does that mean you can't have certain positions on just basic social issues? No, everyone has those. But it means that you need to do your best to contain and cabin your feelings about a particular application until you've heard everyone, including the applicant and any opponents, speak. And it means certainly that you can't let the public know what you're thinking about a project, especially how you may vote on that project before you have heard everyone say their piece. So how does that show up in judicial decisions around inappropriate bias? Now, the first thing I want to say is there aren't any published decisions, at least none that I found, talking about this issue arising in the social media context, which is actually somewhat surprising, given that I should say in California, which is what we're talking about here today. Surprising, of course, since social media has been around for going on 30 years now in some way or form. But the same principles apply to, say, older or more traditional techniques of spreading decision maker opinion, and such as newsletter articles or op-eds or whatnot. So the standard that courts apply when looking at this issue, say when someone raises a challenge to a decision that was made after a decision maker has telegraphed perhaps a sort of a prejudgment about a project, is did the statement in question by the decision maker involve or show an unacceptable probability of actual bias based on concrete facts. There's also a separate sort of inquiry whether actual bias can be proven, and that happens so infrequently that I'm not really talking about it tonight, because it's more this, what's more relevant day to day is this unacceptable probability, right? It's something someone has said that will lead the public to think you're not able to make an impartial decision. And so the seminal case on this issue is the Nasha case. You probably heard of it. And in that case, a planning commissioner wrote an unsigned article that was later attributed to them on a proposed project prior to hearing an appeal on that project to the planning commission. I believe the decision had already been made at the staff level, and then it was appealed to the commission, which happens to your body sometimes, right? And in this article, they argued the project would threaten a wildlife corridor. And so this commissioner's impartiality was challenged after the decision to deny the project occurred, and the court found that an unacceptable probability of actual bias existed. And that was because this newsletter that the commissioner had written in was not merely informational. The article, on the other hand, clearly advocated a position against the project, which it characterized as a threat to a wildlife corridor. So that rose to the level of something a court could not tolerate. I'll just quickly mention two other decisions. There are many decisions out there, and the takeaway tonight is that these kind of things are decided on a case-by-case basis. So I can't tell you, if you give a hypothetical to me, if something would definitely be unacceptable in terms of bias or not. It really is very fact dependent and dependent on the court that's looking at the issue. But in a more recent case called Petrovich, this is an example that goes, much further in the direction of sort of actual bias, just to give you a sort of the spectrum here. Again, a project was denied, and a developer alleged bias by a council member who voted to deny a CUP to build a gas station. The court found that the evidence of the council member was also a member of the neighborhood association opposing the project, as well as a pre-hearing statement he made opposing the gas station, was insufficient to establish bias. However, the court concluded that the council member crossed the line into advocacy against the project when he took affirmative steps to assist opponents of the gas station conditional use permit and organize the opposition at the hearing. So what you just heard in those couple sentences was, it didn't establish incontrovertibly actual bias, but it nonetheless rose to the level of unacceptable probability of actual bias. And, I would venture to guess that all of you, think that's a pretty clear case. Being an active advocate for a project is kind of beyond the pale, but it happens, as this case illustrates. One more example I want to show you in the other direction, and this is certainly not to encourage you to all go out there and start, typing away on social media because of what happened in this case. This was a trial court case, so not binding precedent that actually pro-project prejudgment of a particular council member was challenged after the council approved the project. And here, I just told you that there's no real appellate cases dealing with social media. This is a trial court case dealing with social media very recently. This council member twice posted to social media commenting favorably on the project before the council held a hearing on it. In one post, he called the project great, and that it would bring jobs and tax revenue to the city. This is the city of Banning on the Central Coast. It would reduce the homeless population, and that the retail aspect looks great as well. So, surprisingly, perhaps, this was not held by the trial court to be constitute an unacceptable probability of actual bias. The very short explanation for that being in the decision that there has been no showing of a financial or personal interest in the project by this council member and no specific evidence demonstrating actual bias or a particular combination of circumstances creating an unacceptable risk of bias. So, take that from that what you will. You will hear my takeaway from all of this in a moment. This case probably also reflects the fact that the burden to show bias is on the person challenging the eventual decision. So that provides a city decision maker some comfort, I suppose, and here the petitioners did not meet that burden. The risk of a court finding that you've had an unacceptable probability of actual bias, of course, is that the decision can be invalidated by the court. And so you'd have to go back to the starting point, and likely that person would have to recuse themselves from any further hearings on the matter. If someone has made a statement that could rise to this legal standard I've been describing, the best thing to do, after conversation with the city attorney's office may be to recuse yourself from the decision to avoid any challenge to it down the road. Like I said, the cases don't provide a whole lot of bright line kind of guidance on when something tips into inappropriate bias. But other cases that I'm not talking about tonight say that exists when a decision maker opines gratuitously on a pending application. I take that to mean sort of in an too much sort of fashion, and also unprompted, right? Just kind of their own volition, they put their opinion out there. And certainly when they commit to a result, to a vote, right? Before the hearing has taken place. Here's my takeaway. If you feel like you have to comment on a quasi-adjudicatory issue, a pending permit application on social media for whatever reason, limit your commentary to high-level general statements. Certainly don't make posts that convey you're likely to vote in a particular way, or that could be construed as advocacy for the project, as you saw in the cases I've talked about. And the commentary should moreover reflect that you're keeping an open mind about the merits of the application that's going to come before you. Third, good general practice, always state that you're speaking for yourself, not in your commissioner capacity. This, of course, alone will not avoid the appearance of improper bias, but it's just good practice to do that if you're using your own social media accounts. And that concludes my presentation. So I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I actually have two quick questions. The first one actually came up recently with our issue on the conditional use permit with Camp C and the property with the hand carts. And so we voted on that. We made a recommendation to go forward with it. And then, I think kind of unbeknownst to us initially, that was then appealed by the applicant. So if any of us had come out of that vote, and in the next few days prior to us knowing that they had filed an appeal, had made a comment that goes against the applicant there, where does that knowledge base lie if we didn't know about it? Or if we didn't know there was going to be an appeal?
Sorry, Chair, what do you mean, where does the knowledge base lie? Do you mean like...
So, I mean, how would we be culpable? So we're talking about unacceptable probability of actual bias. And if we came out and made a specific statement that we completely support, in this case, let's say we completely support MST and what they're trying to present, and the plaintiff, in this case, the hand cart, or whoever filed the appeal, came back and then said, well, that shows that you were biased dating back to your discussions in the planning commission. But we didn't know at the time we made that statement that they were appealing.
I'm going to try to keep my response very succinct, because I generally don't like talking about actual matters that are, have come before the city rather than hypotheticals. But
okay, so let's But let's change, we can change it to.
Well, I can answer your question.
I would caution us because this entire permit is actually on appeal.
So
to
it's
the
on, appeal.
Coastal
Yeah,
Commission.
that's actually a good point. So we
So,
can't actually discuss this. So why don't
so-
we table this conversation to another day?
So-
But just the policy of, I guess the question is when knowledge is passed out, and should there be a policy that when, I guess maybe this is really my underlying question, is when appeals are made by whoever on an issue, whatever it is, should that information be then sent to all the commissioners so that we know immediately that there was an appeal that was filed on an issue, so that we can then kind of follow through with everything that you just trained us on?
Well, the first half of your question, I don't have an opinion on, and to me that seems more like just a city internal process issue about how you're all advised that there's been an appeal. Just in the context of what I'm talking about tonight, if you are planning, so if an item is continuing to be appealed through the city process, and I'm just talking about a hypothetical project here, right?
Right.
I think that, in my opinion, best practice would be all decision makers, even if they've already made their decision, in the case of the commission, should just, as a matter of best practice, probably keep mum. Just in the same way that or that may go too far, but use all of the best practice guidance I'm giving you tonight in the same way that you would before the decision came before you. That said, the onus at the point of the appeal is really on the appellate body, in this case, the council, not to engage in any of these statements that I've been talking about tonight, because the matter is going to come before them. You've already made your decision. But I think you raise a good point that anything you say afterwards, could potentially be construed to have applied to your mind state before the decision. So I would just caution you to exercise, restraint whenever you're speaking publicly about an item that is still working its way through the appeal process in the city. And if I understand, this item is not before the city anymore. So, yeah.
Well, I think that answers it. I think it was just that gray area before we find out that something's being appealed.
Right.
I think it was what happens during that short period of time. So I don't think we need to go further on that from my perspective. The other question I have, and this is more just kind of generic, if we have somebody who does work with the city and they bring stuff before the planning commission at different times, and it's conditioned, because let's say they're a developer who does just work in the city of Marina. So at times they come before us multiple times over multiple years, and we have specific opinions about them as a developer, but not about a specific issue. And so we keep our mouths shut about a specific issue that may come before the committee, especially if it ends up on our agenda. But in general, we may not agree or disagree. We may not agree with the developer, or the other side is we may actually really support the developer over somebody else, for example. I'm assuming it's also one of those, it's just best practices. We're in a commission position, just due diligence is you speak, but keep it highly and don't get very specific, or should we just not?
On this issue, if Chair, if you're asking if I would advise saying anything about your particular feelings about a developer one way or the other before an application comes before you, I would strongly advise against that.
Well, not a specific issue. Let's just say in general, there's a like or dislike for a developer. And so it's just in general principles, it had nothing to do about any specific thing that is coming before the council, the commission. It's just that, okay, that person may not like the developer and their general policies.
Yeah, I hear you. So for instance, just to illustrate this a little further, so say there's a developer that a council member doesn't have any personal or financial connections with, because that's a whole different area of conflict of interest law that we're not going to get into tonight, but just has feelings about them. And let's just say they're positive feelings. Is it inadvisable to go talk about how great this developer is, even when they have no project before the city, because of the chance of them coming before the city with a project later?
Correct.
And yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that fact pattern come up in the case law. I would think that it would be a little more difficult for a court to tie a particular application once it comes before you to these prior statements, especially if they've been made, years before. But, if they're more proximate, I don't see why that couldn't be a reason. Someone can challenge the commissioner's, perception of bias over any fact pattern. So I just think there is still a risk there. And if it's a repeat developer you see all the time, I think that really needs to be accounted for when you decide whether to post or not.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. That's what I kind of knew the answer, but I just wanted to hear it from the lawyer. Anybody else have any other questions? Sure.
And thank you, Chair. I'm going to piggyback off of the chair's question and add, what about CalAm? Is that enough of a sentence to give you, or do I need to go and give you a bunch of stuff to go with my question? Or can I just say, what about CalAm? Can we speak about that? Or is that something that we're,
I'm aware, generally of the city's relationship with CalAm and various, public record court cases that are out, published opinions that are out there. I would, for various reasons, that I probably shouldn't go into. I think likewise you should be very circumspect in your statements about CalAm in the event that a matter might come before the city at some point.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Sure.
No. We just need then where you're getting all your pay tonight.
So part of my job is to try to keep the commission out of hot water. So that's also this. We do these, trainings. We did one in January to talk about what the Brown Act was and what general CEQA is. And this is now the second time SEP's given training to the commission. So it's all under the guise of, you are a policymaker, you're representing the city, and so just being mindful of different things. So we just appreciate you guys taking the training and being mindful of that. So thank you. So,
and one last thing, going back to the very first point in the presentation is I also understand that you are your public officials and servants, and you have opinions about things that you want to share. So if ever you feel compelled to say something, but you have questions, you should just come to me or Renee and ask, and we can share some thoughts on what you'd like to say.
Thank you very much, Seth.
Thank you.
All right. So we release Seth and from the onus of responsibility tonight, put it back on you.
So that's fine. That's fine. So we have one last item. In the interest of time, I'm going to try to go through this relatively quickly. But it is an important topic. I have been working on this for 2.5 years. So let me just start.
Dragging at this point.
So as the commission's aware, we are making a lot of progress on the downtown specific plan. The item came before the commission and council last November, December. Since that time, we've released the draft EIR. We've had the 45-day public comment period. And now we're in the final stages of writing the final EIR. And what a final EIR is, it tabulates all the comments received. We try to address every single comment. We compile all that. We slap it onto the draft EIR and we bring it before the commission. And so that's what we're in the stages now. Since I came before the commission last, also, I've been doing a pretty extensive outreach to people who might be impacted by the downtown plan, or people who I feel should be aware of the plan. So I've been meeting with developers. I've been meeting with local school board folks, business owners in the downtown, property owners, just to let them know about the plan. And so also been speaking with a lot of other cities, which I'll go into. So just to remind the commission, this is the area of the downtown plan. And as I mentioned, we're in the final EIR stage. I'm hopefully gonna get the final EIR back next couple weeks. And we are scheduling the specific plan for hearings in September and October. And in the interim, I thought it would be good to share with the commission all the other good stuff going on in the downtown and my thoughts in terms of how hopefully the commission and council can support it and actually implement the document. So I'm going to go over several things that are going on in the downtown and some ways to activate the space. So first off, the city did apply for an ATP grant. This was a $12 million grant for a $20 million project to do a road diet along Del Monte, to make it 4 lanes into 2, to widen the medians, to have larger sidewalks, more dedicated bike paths. And this, with the actual downtown plan hopefully being adopted, will actually create a downtown look and feel. And the goal is really to slow down the traffic. As you're all aware, it really acts as a highway commercial zone where people just whiz through. We're really trying to calm the traffic down. And this ATP grant that we applied for is directly tied to the commission's work. We were ineligible for this money prior to getting our housing element certified. One of the boxes we have to check on this grant is, do you have a certified housing element? Well, now that we do, because of the commission and council, we were able to apply for this grant. So we will find out hopefully in November if we got this grant. Another thing coming before the council later this year, hopefully in the fall, is we've heard pretty extensively from the community about Del Monte Reservation, that intersection needs some major work. So we will be bringing some conceptual drawings to the council in the fall. The medians along Del Monte, we're going to be bringing those back to council probably in September, October timeframe, to widen the medians, to make them beautiful, to add more landscaping, just to really give it a appropriate look and feel. And then in the interim period, what I've been doing, I've been speaking to a lot of different cities, and I ended up kind of landing on Morgan Hill. They did not have a downtown 10 years ago. So I spoke extensively with their staff, like, hey, we're in a similar position. What have you guys done to actually create the downtown? Because I ran a 5K race in downtown Morgan Hill. There's shops there, there's coffee places, a great place to walk. So I spoke with their staff. Very successful downtown plan. They have a lot of different events, a Friday night music series, pop-up park. They closed down part of the street to have a Halloween safe area for kids to trick or treat. Similar to the Vive Calier in San Jose where they shut down the road. They have the movie night. Santa Cruz applied for an ILG grant. That was a $20 million grant to help increase the sidewalks. If we can get the pro housing designation, which I'm working on, we will be eligible for that grant. So that was another kind of connection point for us. The Los Altos folks, I reached back out to them. They've been doing a lot of public art in the downtown. They reduced the cost for their special event permit to activate the space. And they've really reduced the regulatory barriers. They've tried to push as much stuff down to the staff. No public hearings if you need certain approvals, just to help business owners. Los Gatos hired a part-time economic development coordinator, and they've been very supportive of the parklets or the allowing people to go a little bit into the public right-of-way to have additional space. So kind of in speaking with multiple cities and multiple downtown folks, there's really 2 key things that the city has to do. We really need to reimagine the space. People don't think of this area as a downtown. We need to have a public art master plan that's in the downtown plan to show people the history of Marina. Some cities have hired firms to have 3D models of what certain key intersections could look like to help people reimagine what the space could look like. Extensive outreach is I'm going to have to continue to do if the plan can be adopted to property owners and to continue to organize large community events. And that goes to activating the space. I need to work with the Chamber of Commerce to create a walking tour of downtown or have a food passport where people can go. We're very blessed here in Marina with all the different ethnic eats. So what can we do to activate the space? Maybe, you get a passport, you go to all the different great ethnic food eats in downtown. And these are just an example, and we'll go into more. But we need to really reimagine the space, activate the space to give people more of a reason to come to the core of Marina. Some things on the city end that we can do, and part of my research, our special event permit, we don't really have one. I'll be working with the Planning Commission and City Council to add that to the municipal code, and really trying to focus on having special events to bring residents and businesses to our urban core. Continuing once again to do outreach to the nonprofit and development community. And as mentioned, there's that ILG grant that if we can get some additional funding from the council, we can potentially help us work on that grant. So yeah, and so finally the quote is, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. We are at 92% of the consultant budget for the downtown plan. We can always tweak it, but my push to the commission and council when I come back in a couple months is let's adopt the plan. Now, before the meeting started, I did have each of the commissioners do a dot exercise, and because I don't know if we actually have any more members of the public. Let me see. We do not. I don't think I have to necessarily worry, but just to be safe, I'm going to walk over to where the dots were and try to get some feedback. So I've given my opinions about ways to reimagine and activate the space, but I was hoping to hear from some of the commissioners, and I'll hit up maybe the top 2 or 3 that I'm seeing that have a lot of dots, and I will present this to the city council.
You had put pizza with the dots, you would have gotten a lot more emphasis.
Okay.
I mean, you give us an example with pizza and dots on the slide.
Okay.
Give us.
Sounds good. So I'm seeing a lot of dots near 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll just pick one. One of them is identify timing, location, and funding source for a new fire station to adequately support the growth within the specific plan. So does the commission want to talk about that? I mean, that seems pretty straightforward to me. Are any other comments, Chris?
For the most of us, that is.
I'm speaking in the microphone.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's a very clear cut one.
Okay.
That is a large hot button for us. And
Yeah.
where that goes, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that.
Okay. Another one was establish a downtown business improvement district or other funding mechanisms to organize and finance the construction of downtown infrastructure improvements in a more meaningful and intentional increments. That seems pretty straightforward to me as well. Really try to focus on the infrastructure. Okay. Sounds good. Program 5, dedicated page on the city's website to show community members how their properties can be redeveloped to accommodate multifamily housing throughout downtown. Provide examples of housing in duplex, triplexes, and multiplexes. Absolutely. And that actually speaks to some of the stuff that when I spoke with other cities, they would connect with property owners and say, oh, hey, your property's at 111 Main Street. With the new specific plan, this is how your property could look. Right. And that's used with the SketchUp model to kind of show the different architecture. And one last one will say, develop and maintain a business retention and expansion program. That makes total sense. So, yeah. Were there any other additional comments? I will be incorporating this when I'm giving the same presentation to the council August 7th. So I will be taking a picture of this, showing it to the council. So any other food for thought?
The one that I don't see on there, and I don't know if this is a city, a chamber of commerce. It's a facilitating communication with our businesses I mean, the revitalization plan, it's a large swath of blocks. And what happens up at this end of our community, or that end of the community versus that end of the community of the revitalization is very different. The development is different, the restaurant, the businesses are different. And the impression that I'm getting from conversations from others around the community is that there are little cliques of businesses, little cliques of development that all have their own opinions. But I don't know how do we get them together so that they actually don't come back to this. They don't see this plan as the enemy.
Right.
And they see this as a growth, because to your point, we can just not have a plan and they're going to be stuck in the same situation they've been in for the last 20 years. We have to move forward, but it's how do we, so I think what's not on there is the facilitation of the current businesses. Maybe it's part of retention, and a subset of the retention is trying to get them all together so that they actually talk about what they want to see instead of letting 2 or 3 people dominate the conversation and pretend and act like they represent the wider population group, where the wider population group is probably more the silent majority that are just focused on keeping their business moving and going, but want to see a vibrant business. And probably have a lot of views, but they just get silenced.
Isn't the vehicle to kind of do that? Isn't that the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, that's why I say I maybe, and it may get, and so and that's why I say that's why I said maybe I'm not sure the right lever to help guide that and facilitate that.
Right.
And maybe it is the Chamber of Commerce, and so maybe the engagement on the retention side is working with the Chamber of Commerce to deal with that. But that communication piece, we've heard it multiple times in the commission here, where there are businesses that come forward to present, and they have ideas that may not be in alignment with where the plan is moving towards.
Right. Yeah. So to your point, I have met 2 or 3 times with Mary Leffel. She's the Chamber of Commerce main person. She's very supportive of the plan. Actually, I spoke to the chamber about 2 or 3 months ago about the downtown plan, and she indicated, yeah, you should probably come back and speak now that we're getting a little bit closer to hopefully getting the project approved by commission and council. So yeah, definitely need to increase that communication between us and the chamber. So that was basically the presentation. I'm feverishly working on this. Nick knows doors been shut quite a bit, meeting with multiple stakeholders for the last 6-7 weeks, trying to make this final push. I mean, if there are other people the commission thinks, and you can email me after the meeting, that you think I should be speaking to encourage support for the plan, please let me know and I'm happy to meet with them. And I look forward to bringing it in front of the commission in September. So
Can I have a kind of separate question, because it's not part of the downtown core here. How much support are we getting from developers and businesses that are not part of the core, but are in the city? So for other areas of the city that may be considered competition.
People generally have been supportive of the plan, either in the downtown or not. So there have been a little bit of opposition, but for the most part, people have been supportive. So. That concludes my presentation.
Anything else?
I mean, I understand talking to the business owners and that, but as I remember, most of Reservation Business District is actually owned by about 2 or 3 individuals.
Oh.
So Lucky's and all those, they lease from one, and then the next one, and they're leasing from somebody else. But they're probably the key people in terms of development of those properties, not so much the businesses, the property owners.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's, I've met with several of the property owners and business owners.
yeah.
So, yeah,
I think that's a big deal. Yeah, that's where the money is.
yep.
Right. Can I just go on record saying that I think that the better use for the Lake Haddon area than moving the city facilities over there? I'd rather leave them here and use that for cleared park and use space. To me, when I look at Lake, and when I look at the lake and I look at the area surrounding the lake, if it's cleared up and we figure out what to do with that, that literally is at the transition point between reservation and Del Monte, literally.
Right.
And if you're looking at, we go back to some of the examples that you just gave here, where they created 4 areas and central areas for art or for festivals or for permitting. We don't have a lot of those areas on either of those 2 main routes, but we do in one specific area, and that's right there at the lake.
Mhm.
And as much as it would be great to have a city center there at the same time, from a vibrancy perspective, that seems like an area that, so again, it's not on the list there.
Right.
But that is a centerpiece of our community. It could be a centerpiece of our community. And it was probably 30 years ago.
Okay.
That would be the only other thing I have to throw into it. Anybody else? Commissioner Ron is like, he's got his hands on his bag. He's ready to go home.
So Commission, I don't think we'll have any items for the next August 8th. So we'll probably see you guys all August 22nd. So, yeah. So Nick will send out the cancellation notice.
To that point, and I don't know if this is possible, but we have gotten a couple comments, and again, it's the minority, but they're a minority who are interested. Is there a way on the website, at the header of the website, where all the city council and all the commission are set up, where there's just a kind of a generic statement that meetings are set based on a set schedule on the agenda, but if there are no agenda items, the meetings can be canceled and they would show up underneath the separate one? Because we've gotten a couple of times where people say, well, we have no idea when the plaintiff is going to meet or not meet. I'm like, I love it because they're interested, but then they never show up. But to that point, like, well, we never know when the meetings are. Well, the meetings never change. It's just that sometimes we don't have an agenda. And so when you drill down into the web page, yes, you can see, okay, we click on the agenda, the meeting has been canceled, because you'll write a note in there that we know the August 8th meeting, for example, will be canceled. But at the top, just so that whenever somebody comes in generically to the city agenda page, that they can see a notice that states, if a commission does not have an agenda item or does not have agendas, the meetings may be canceled, just so the public knows that at a higher level. Sometimes there just aren't agenda items and we don't just meet to meet.
Sure, we can add that to the agenda. That's fine.
I know, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily us. It's something that I've seen that posted on the community pages for Marina and posted next door a couple times.
Yeah, sure, certainly.
Community, I can't talk. Members of the public can also click on the notify me button on our webpage and then subscribe to email notifications for any agenda they want to subscribe to. So I subscribe to everything in our website, so I know what's happening with other departments, and it just lets you know an agenda is posted, a cancellation is posted. That's a really good way for people to keep in the know. Yeah. So yeah, and text message as well. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm just trying to think of how many things I can keep you for an hour from driving home.
Driving home.
I am just kidding. Okay, so we finished up 9 is staff and major project updates. Even if you had any, I would postpone them. Unless you really wanted to talk about them. No. 10 is correspondence, nothing. Good. 11, oh, it's adjournment. Okay, so adjourn.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you. Yes, I'm still here.